Hey everybody, it's me, it's Dan, coming at you with another flip through video, talking about a book I have read to death. I never hear this book talked about, so let's rectify that tonight. So let me start with my history of the book. Uh, so the book in question is Lou Myers' Group Therapy. It's a collection of cartoons that, when I first saw this, I think it was like $5 at the Strand bookstore when I was in college. I never heard of Lou Myers, but I would take bets on a lot of stuff that I never heard of that came in used there because they would get, at least back then, they were getting pretty odd stuff pretty frequently. That's where I found Ben Catcher, Phoebe Glackner, a few other cartoonists. Anyway, so Lou Myers, I looked at this. I've been a big fan of Jules Pfeiffer for a long time. He was one of the first kind of non superhero cartoonists that I really vibed with. And the first book I ever saw was Sick, Sick, Sick. And that's still great book. If you can get one of those 60s paperbacks, go for it. And anyway, let me get the obligatory. Let me at least flip this to the back cover so you got something else to look at. But the obligatory self plug. I run a book, record, comic, tape, CD, old media, you name it store. I'm in Ballston Spa, New York. Come swing by, buy some stuff, sell some stuff, hang out, look at all the stuff. We're open Wednesday to Sunday, and if you like what you see here, I'm yeah, I'm the only guy who works there. So anyway, so Lou Myers, a little background about Lou Myers. He's definitely the artist. Excuse me, the artist I would say he's closest to is Pfeiffer, but he's. I think that's more because he's not like anything else than that he's especially like glued to the Jules Pfeiffer style, and I'm not sure which one of them came to this first because uh, Pfeiffer's early style, because he was working for Will Eisner, does not look like his kind of mature style that he comes into in the early 60s with the very scratchy, kind of almost improvised looking pen lines. Um, Excuse me, sorry, I'm getting over something. So, anyway, uh, back cover, you've got, uh, a bizarre uh, bio that was presumably written by Myers that I don't know that we can really trust it that much. Let me read you a little bit of it. Um, so it lists off his actual like resume up here. He had cartoons in Esquire, Evergreen Review, Monocle. I know I saw at least one or two of them when I was looking through the Ethan Persoff archive of all those issues of the Realist. Um, and probably other places. I know he published a novel and he published one other collection of cartoons, which I do have, and we could take a look at that in the future if people are interested in this. Anyway, so a little bit of this fake biography. I was born in Paris and grew up in the Bronx. Then I got a job at 20th Century Fox forever in the bullpen of the art department. We never got a raise and we never got fired. I was there 9 years, and the only thing I remember is painting a little gold ring on the finger of Don Amici in an ad. The hand is being kissed by Gene Hersholt, the long lost father of Amici, crying on his knees. The way the ring was done looked as though Hersholt was biting the ring, testing for gold. I had been married before during the Great Depression when I went up to a workers' club and married Henny, whom Bessie found out was pregnant in Odette's Awake and say, yeah, it's like nonsense. It reads a little bit like How to Talk at Jen. Uh, that's a book we should look at. That's like everybody thinks that the only Ernie Kovacs prose work is Zumar, but Zumar was like dashed off very quickly. Zumar, for those who don't know, is a novel written by TV sketch comedy godfather Ernie Kovacs. I've read a decent amount of Zumar. I wasn't crazy about it, but the much better Ernie Kovacs book that nobody talks about is called How to Talk at Jen. I have that. We'll look at that at some point. So, let's start looking at this book. So, title page, splash title page. You have the publisher, Harper and Row. So, this is not being published by, what's something that's predominantly a, uh, a comics publisher. I would guess this guy was in New York City. Um, there's a few reasons for that, but I think like him and Pfeiffer being stationed in New York City allowed them to make contact with a lot of like prose publishers that were a lot larger than the comics publishers, and as a result, their careers kind of exist kind of on the fringe of like other comics culture because those specific kinds of comics would end up in bookstores and stuff. It was just a different. It was a different section of the store, so like I don't hear a lot of superhero fans talking about Jules Pfeiffer. I don't really hear anybody talking about Lou Myers, and yeah. So anyway, so this book, the cartoons in here were originally published in magazines 1960, 1962, 1963, 1964, and 1965. So early 60s. I think this one is before his other book. I'd have to check the copyright date on the other book. It's around here somewhere. So why this book? Number one, like maybe it's even closer to William Steig. Like it's taking some cues from like Picasso when he decided to kind of throw out um, all of the technical rules and stuff, and he was doing kind of those very angular, kind of deconstructed looking drawings and paintings. Except this is obviously done. This guy's not on the technical level of a Picasso, but he gets the most out of very few lines, and I think like in cartooning that's as or more important than the realism of the rendering or a lot of times I would honestly prefer a much simpler figure if it looks unique and expressive like almost every uh, face on this page and in most of this book look. um, it speaks to you faster, right? Because a big part of reading comics is in the pacing of them and kind of the amount of distance you have from the material, like the extent to which uh, you can focus on various things within an image. This kind of cuts it all down. There's not even panel borders. We just have the figures. The entire background is just one line indicating a bar. And we just have pure sight gags. The guy's hat changes proportions constantly, but that kind of works in this style to make it look more. It makes a page look more dynamic. It looks very intentional, and it works in a way where like I don't know, if you're reading like a Spider-Man comic book and the proportions kept changing like this way, it would feel a little bit disorienting. But here it's quick, it's universal. You can see why a large publisher might have thought that this had a better shot at reaching a mass audience than superhero comics. And this is definitely, I wouldn't say most of this is like explicit, but it's written for adults. Um, a lot of the history of comics in the United States that are written for adults, it's in magazines because there's no comics code. You don't have this weird hyper centralized audience for magazines that you have for comics from pretty early on. Like, for whatever reason, in the United States, comic books were, for a lot of their history, just like the immediate presumption that they're meant for consumption by people under the age of, say, 14 years old. It wasn't like that in the development of comics culture in other countries. But yeah, we have this lady does a little dance. He draws a funny image every time, and his sense of composition is great. And then we have like a little Cold War political joke at the end. Um, and yeah, we have these scenes, and I feel like he can't be like doing roughs of these. Like, this has to be, maybe he's throwing out panels, but I don't. One of the things I like about this is it has that feeling of kind of subconscious cartooning, and you do get that sometimes in more heavily rendered works, like say like Airtight Garage by Mobius, or like uh a lot of Robert Crumb stuff. That's the appeal for me, is that there doesn't seem to be much space at all between the person's head and the paper. And I think comic books are sort of unique in that a lot of times it will be one person. If, depending on the techniques you're using, they can be made very quickly. And I think the visual element makes it sort of less intention driven usually than, say, prose literature. Um, like, if he, like, a piece of prose, usually you want to do as many drafts as you can manage, because most people are not necessarily going to do their best writing on the first draft. But with this stuff, a lot of the appeal is the sketchiness, is that first draft quality, and just like that weird, like, what the fuck is it's like a cactus pig. I don't know, Frederick Nietzsche's head on a dinosaur, but they're like fingers. There's a lot to look at here, and kind of a trite relationship joke, but after the prior 2 pages of weird monsters and stuff, it's forgiven. And so, like Pfeiffer, he highlights some of these strips by putting a full panel at a larger size than the panels in the rest of the book, and giving them a full page, but like giving them a lot of empty space, but in a different way than, say, Chester Brown would later on. This one looks like it's reproduced from grease pencil, which gives it a much different texture than a lot of the rest of the book. And so This is like a baseball umpire having a neurotic breakdown. This feels very Pfeiffer. Um, who am I to tell you safe or out? Why are we standing around with a stick trying to hit a ball? In the end, it doesn't matter at all. And just like the looks on these baseball players kind of look like this guy looks like a ventriloquist dummy. Like his face doesn't really change a whole lot. Something's very funny about just how kind of stiff and kind of uh, just sort of it almost looks like an action figure here. Uh, and it's funny because he does this in two panels. Until I looked at it this closely, I never even noticed that. So he gets away with some cheap stuff with the drawing, I guess. And 100 years from now, they may even think of it as an idiot game. I don't know. Is baseball still popular? I haven't been in the baseball world for a while. And yeah, and he manages to create depth and implied perspective just by kind of drawing tinier versions of the figures in empty space. And just the costume kind of tells us already that they're on a baseball diamond. They're probably near home plate. And yeah, so we have two drunk people at a bar. There's a lot of these strips that take place in bars, and some tells me that Lou Myers probably had a little bit of a party streak in him. So here's some more Cold War stuff. This is a guy building a bunker, and this again is kind of on the Pfeiffer side of things. Although look at that, that is a nice cockroach. This is a strong page, and he gets a lot of mileage out of. Almost looks like it's like acrylic paint or something on top of a transparency slide in the dirt there. If anybody knows what that is, leave it in the comments. And yeah, and it's a lot of these. I think I'm going to flip through a little faster just because the speed is definitely one of the things that makes this strong comics. I feel like comics that I can read fairly quickly, for better or for worse, for whatever reason, I tend to remember them more fondly. And this is stripped down to the essentials. If you want to see what cartooning is, kind of removed from the other uh, mediums that it kind of has like a Venn diagram overlap with. This is as close to like this or Peanuts or something. There's dog flying through the air and it's still barking. Okay, this is a weird one where another one at a bar. Maybe everything's at a bar. I think because there aren't a huge number of settings that you can, kayfabe with just like one solid line. And so her hair decapitates this guy, and then she eats him whole, and there's your comic strip, and we have some wild lines going on there with the hair. I like that. Here's the Leaning Tower of Pisa with uh, the ladies waving off the Greek or the Roman soldiers off to war. Here's one about Napoleon. I think all of his figures, it makes sense that he would start goofing around with like historical figures, and again, Pfeiffer does that in 666 with the like Oedipus comic and stuff. They all look so tiny and kind of pathetic, right? Like, yes, Napoleon or whoever this is supposed to be, like, he was tiny, but like that literally looks like a worm, right? Uh, there's a lot of stuff about like bad male self confidence in these strips. I'm kind of seeing now, like there's a lot of people cheating on people, so there he is in his full battle regalia. You know, he's ready to go to the Halloween party, but she wants to shack up with the horse. And here's another one in pencil. Um, this looks a lot closer to like an animation style than a lot of the other ones. Um, we have again some more great action with um, varies up the line there a little bit, makes it darker for the punchline. And yeah, we have some humor about, you know, in the 60s, there unfortunately was a big problem with the Ku Klux Klan. Nothing like it. Well, no, I mean, we got. They're not dressed in like bed sheets now, but you know, obviously we have our own problems in this country. Um, and I think this is the right approach to kind of, or one of the right approaches to take to this kind of material in comics, because it just, they look so pathetic. Like the guy driving his car, right? Like anybody in a big costume doing something very mundane, like the way the shoulders hunched with that one line tells me, you know, this isn't Batman driving the Batmobile. Like this guy is kind of a loser. And more cuckolding jokes, sort of. Except this one, it looks like somebody's going to have sex with somebody, and then they just start listing off different secret handshakes until the the lady leaves the bed, and there's the cover of the book. Um, and just more goofy movement. This is kind of neat. He actually uses the Picasso style, uses the pencil. He gets a lot of mileage out of the grayscale in this book. Um, and I would say like this would be a good thing to look at. And he tells us the whole setup of the joke. Again, the background is just implied from the chairs and the table. It's dynamic. There's a different looking kind of, you know, there's morphing objects, right? And like Harriman does that with the backgrounds in Crazy Cat. And Myers does it by having such a simple setting of just two people talking. Like, you can change one figure from like this to this on the next page, and it still reads, because we know from the size of the panels, right? That's how he's kind of distinguishing one segment from another. And also just the fact there's only the two characters talking. This reads totally fine. You could get through it. You know, I don't know that you'd fully understand it, but without understanding these are all like kind of aping Picasso drawings. This would read well. I don't know the name of that specific painting or drawing, but something about like the placement of the nose and the lips makes me think that like Basil Wolverton might have looked at this before he did the cover to. I want to say it's like Mad 14, the one that has the like Mona Lisa with like giant boils cover. lot of stuff about like marriage dissolution here. Maybe he was getting divorced. I don't know a lot of. I don't know if anybody really took down a lot of actual biographical details about this guy when he was living. Um, but yeah, he was probably, and it's like drawing a comic about something doesn't mean you're actually doing something, but the fact that these feel like background details and it, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there that maybe this guy spent a decent amount of time in bars and was getting a divorce. Here, yeah, okay, more kind of battle of the sexes, anxiety stuff. This doctor gets beaten to death by a woman's breasts. Uh, he gets. There's something nice about that organic, uneven line. Like Shel Silverstein gets a lot of mileage out of that. Um, Rocco's Modern Life, right? The backgrounds, they're not perfectly kind of drawn off with a straight edge. And I think that works to great effect here, and it's visually varied from a lot of the rest of the book because instead of the panels being positioned on the bottom, they're kind of positioned off to the right side, and it kind of tells you that maybe not when he originally drew these, maybe when he originally drew these, but putting together this book, he's every single strip he's thinking about the negative space as part of the page. Now, if I paid full retail and this came out, would I be quite as thrilled with it? I don't know, but I don't know. I paid $5 for this 10 years ago. I'm pretty happy with it. And it works. It reads great. And then when we have the only completely full 2-page spread in the entire book, it's like, whoa, it really pops out, and he doesn't have to do a lot of work. He just has to kind of do a Bart Simpson and draw this square over and over again on the chalkboard. We have a board meeting. Turns out that the CEO is, it's another excuse to draw people doing goofy stuff, and if 2 people doing goofy stuff is funny, well, it's got to be that much funnier with 6 people, and I'm into it. Like that's a great. All of these faces, that's like, for me, that's like the money shot here. Although the feet is pretty funny too. Some more Cold War stuff. I like this huge change in the lettering. And let's talk about his lettering a little bit, because it's not actually just kind of unfiltered handwriting. Like it is. I don't know that he might be measuring off. Yeah, okay, it looks pretty even. So he's measuring this off with a straight edge, but he's not. Excuse me. He's not worrying about it too much, and he's not using all caps. He's varying the size of the lettering organically to make an impact or distinguish different sequences from each other. And he doesn't even bother drawing the front of this. And it works because you get your negative space, and then, right, like this reads, he gets a lot of mileage out of the text portion of the comics without it seeming like overly wordy, or to the point where it makes it not read well. Love the little dancing guy. What a butt bump. What a butt bump. I don't feel like these mountains work. Those feel a little kind of cluttered and weak to me, and that just kind of looks like a big asterisk or like a spider. But other than that, that's a decent one. Hair, he gets a lot of mileage out of weird shaped hair, and the actual like meat of the meat that's not how I should be referring to that, but you know what I mean, like the part of the head that you draw that isn't hair, right? And that's where your silhouette comes. Well, your silhouette comes from like the shape of the jaw and the shape of the hair, and he doesn't really vary the shape of the head much, like at all, almost. But he varies the shape of the hair a lot, and like I don't want to compare this to Robert Bresson, but the purely and only in the extent to which it's kind of paring down um, the medium to the exact minimum that you can convey, and making like implication do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And again, playing with page layout, it's not flashy, but it's very effective. Um, and like this is wild. That's kind of like psychedelic. You get that, I like that face. You know, other stuff. That's a pretty impressive. Like he's kind of giving away the game here because like he's choosing to draw like this. Like if he knows how to draw like that, this is and I mean I think it's clear it is a stylistic choice, but uh, it's one that he sticks to a lot. So at the very least, I would say this is how he wants to draw. Um, it's a little Mad Magazine-ish. It's like a Vogue magazine parody. You even have like the typewriter text under the panels narrating it, sort of like you would have on TV parodies and Mad sometimes. Uh, Here's kind of a play on that Charles Atlas, the bully that made a man out of Mac ad. Except this time the nerd takes a magnifying glass and vaporizes both of them. This one's a little dark. This one's kind of got like Death Ray vibes, and using the windows of the building as your panel layout. That's really inventive. And more bedroom talk, more kind of playing around with faces. I guess like it's sort of the opposite side of the page version of what he was doing with that one strip with the buildings. Yeah, so turns out the woman's a literal cow, and the guy gets some milk. This is my favorite strip in the whole book. This is the first like 20 times I ever looked at this. I burst out laughing, and it's just so good. You have the diagonal staggering of the panels, which makes for a much more dynamic reading experience when you have very similarly composed panels than, say, I don't know, like it reads a little bit better to me than, say, the full page 9 panel grid kind of continuous motion storytelling, like in the early Mad magazines. And like I mean that's very like Watchmen uses that a lot, especially in the Rorschach issue. I want to say it's issue 6, but yeah, you got a bunch of bunnies, got an elephant just chilling out on a deserted island. Why? I don't know. It doesn't need to be explained. In this panel where the elephant eats it and falls into the ocean. Something's just very funny about that to me, and yeah, I don't know that I can explain exactly what the specific appeal of this strip is, but this is the one I always show to people. And we're almost at the end. We got an electronic husband, and he blows up, and she's not happy. Uh, it's like Buster Keaton, like technology against man or whatever. Like man, man beset by modern society, right? Like it's not a mistake that the thing this guy hangs himself with is like one of those uh, handles on the subway. It looks kind of like the New York City subway, I want to say. And finally, we have Angel Devil. This is a pretty short. This one kind of reminds me of William Steig, and we'll have to talk about William Steig at some point in the future. But yeah, he goes back to the thick pencil, and we have the Angel Devil, Sigmund Freud, or I think it's just supposed to be an analyst because he's bald on top. And one of them's laughing at her, one of them's crying at her, and she just looks like she's in sheer horror, but the picture looks silly, so we can process the image without rejecting it in a way that maybe some people might struggle with in a more highly rendered image. And that was Lou Meyer's group therapy. So keep an eye out. I'm going to be doing more of these videos. I haven't really. Let's come up with a name for this show now. Let's call it The Funny Pages. I'll have to look up if that's probably copyrighted, but I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, catch you on the flip side.